Bitcoin is a scam, at least according to this video that I saw on YouTube called What No One Tells You About the Scam Called Bitcoin. Everything Money is the one that posted this video. They have almost 300,000 subscribers. The video has 63,000 views. And as I had expected, when I went to the comments, I just saw people destroying him. Lost count how many times his channel is wrong. 15 years have passed and you can't even take the time to read a 9-page white paper. This is the same guy who said stay away from Palantir at $8, shorted Nvidia, and said don't buy Tesla at $150. This video will definitely not age well. This is the same guy that picked Intel over AMD and Nvidia. So I guess you kind of have an idea of what's going to happen in this video. So he's going to talk about all this misinformation, all this FUD. He's going to spread all this information to you. He's going to tell you that you're wrong for looking into Bitcoin, for understanding Bitcoin. And my goal here is to break down every single piece of misinformation in this video. Let's watch the video. We'll go through the whole thing. Let's get started.
Bitcoin. It's called a digital gold. It's called the future of money, and it's a hedge against inflation. But what if I told you that Bitcoin might actually be the biggest financial scam of our time? Today, we're pulling back the curtain on the crypto ecosystem, exposing the fraud, manipulation, and speculative hype driving Bitcoin, and why you should think twice before investing. Bitcoin.
I think he missed one really important point there. The biggest Ponzi scheme or the biggest scam in our system right now is that we believe that these things have value. They're pieces of paper that can be printed out of thin air. We believe that pieces of paper have value because of the number that they have written on them. That's the biggest scam in the system. That's the biggest scam that we have today, not Bitcoin.
Story starts with 3 key selling points that makes everybody's panties get all excited. A limited supply of 21 million coins, decentralization of a currency, and freedom from government control. This was the premise behind Bitcoin and why it would be a great changer for how we interact with each other financially. But when you strip away all the buzzwords, here's the reality. Bitcoin has no intrinsic value, no earnings, no dividends. If you think it has intrinsic value, you are going to lose a lot of money in some way, shape, or form. Maybe not on Bitcoin, but on some other thing.
Okay, so he named the video Bitcoin is a scam, then he said maybe in some other thing. What do the other things have to do with Bitcoin? I want to show you a graphic that I strongly believe is 100% the truth. So I wrote here, Bitcoin is not just another asset. Bitcoin is the only asset that matters. He seems to think that Bitcoin and crypto are the same thing. So Bitcoin, crypto. The reality, this is the perception of most people. Bitcoin and crypto are separate from fiat. But the reality is Bitcoin is separate from fiat and crypto. Crypto is just a part of the fiat currency system. It's just people who want to control everyone else. They want to have a form of money that they can manipulate. They can do whatever they want with. They can have most of the power that's in the system, and they don't want other people to be able to have any of that power. Bitcoin completely moves away from that entire system. So let's go back to the video here.
Entire worth depends on people believing it's worth something more tomorrow than today. You're hoping that you wake up tomorrow and somebody else says, I will pay you more for that. So you might sit there and say, well,
that's how value works. Value is subjective. So let's say with gold, before humans existed, gold had 0 value. The people in the beginning who accumulated gold, they thought it was a great collectible. It looked beautiful. It was a very nice material. They collected it. And then after that, people started paying for gold. And over time, why do people hold gold? It's because they expect somebody to pay more US dollars per ounce over time. Maybe about 120 years ago, 1913, 110 years ago, 1913, 1 ounce of gold was worth something like 20 US dollars. Today, 1 ounce of gold is worth 2,600 US dollars, and people hold on to it expecting that the value will continue to go up. Gold has been valuable, and it's the most valuable asset in the entire world, specifically because people want to hold it in their vaults and they want to keep it in their safe. They want to save for the future using gold. So thinking that people are crazy for thinking that Bitcoin's value is going to go up, thinking that Bitcoin is a greater fool theory because people think that Bitcoin's price is going to go up. I mean, I think that in and of itself just shows you that this person has no idea what Bitcoin is, has no idea what they're talking about. They haven't really gone deep. They haven't read the point of Bitcoin, the reasons for why Bitcoin is so valuable. Bitcoin competes as money, as a way to exchange value with the US dollar. Most people who don't understand Bitcoin, who don't understand how money works, don't understand that. Even the president of the United States thinks that Bitcoin doesn't compete with the dollar. But if you look at other parts of the world, people use the dollar to save for the future.
You've said that before. Everybody keeps saying that it keeps going up in value. That's what happens during hype. Look at the tulips back in the 1600s. Why did those keep?
Comparing Bitcoin to tulips may be one of the stupidest arguments that somebody can make. Honestly, it may be one of the dumbest things that you can say if you want to sound informed about Bitcoin. If a financial advisor tells you that Bitcoin is comparable to tulips, you know for a fact that you should run away from their information, from their videos, from their content as quickly as possible, because tulips didn't drop in price and then recover 4 times. The price of Bitcoin has fallen by 70 to 80%, 4 times so far. And yet, we're making new all-time highs regularly. We're going to continue making new all-time highs. While people like this guy here, whatever his name is going to continue telling you that Bitcoin is comparable to tulips. Everything money, you should be ashamed of yourself for even thinking that this is the right way to think of Bitcoin. If you think that Bitcoin is comparable to tulips, I mean, you really have no hope. But let's keep going on with the video.
Keep going up in value. If Bitcoin feels familiar, it's because we've seen these speculative bubbles many times before, and we will never stop seeing them. Think about cannabis stocks like Tilray, which skyrocketed to $300 in 2018 before crashing to $1.41, a 99.5% loss. Electric vehicle companies like NIO peaked at $66.99 before plunging to $470. Workhorse going bankrupt. Tattooed Chef going bankrupt and going under. What do these bubbles have in common? A story that's too good to resist, and prices that can't be justified, but more importantly, human envy and FOMO.
Okay, so the comparison to all these companies that are businesses is just dumb on its own. It just shows you how little research this person did here. So when we look at how Bitcoin really works, let me show you just a graphic that I found that shows you the values of Bitcoin, the way that Bitcoin works, why Bitcoin is not a company, why it can't be comparable to any other asset. So we can see here, Bitcoin has no founder, Bitcoin has no ruling foundation, Bitcoin has no pre-mine, Bitcoin has no insiders, Bitcoin has no initial investors, Bitcoin has no office, Bitcoin has no website, Bitcoin has no paid executive team, Bitcoin has no marketing team, no paid dev team, no starting price, no human controlling it, and Bitcoin is the fairest money. So when you look at all these factors and you compare it to some random company, like, let's see here, who do you compare it to? NIO, Workhorse, Tilray. Tilray was just a garbage company. They were trying to compete with other companies that were already providing cannabis, so weed. They were selling weed, and Tilray wanted to compete with them. Of course, if you have competition, you're not going to do well if you have an incompetent management team. That's the good thing here. Bitcoin doesn't even have a management team. Nobody can compete with Bitcoin because of all those factors that I mentioned. All of these are companies. They're businesses. They produce a product and they sell it to make a profit. Bitcoin is not producing a product. Bitcoin is just a network. It's a network that allows you to move a commodity from one place to another. The commodity is Bitcoin, the coin, BTC. So if you search for BTC anywhere, you can see what it is. You can see the price. But BTC is the commodity that you're moving using the Bitcoin network, and you're moving it to anywhere that you want to. As long as the other party is connected to the internet, they can accept Bitcoin. So none of these companies have anything even similar to this. All of these companies have every single one of these factors connected to them. So all these companies had a founder. All these companies they very likely have a ruling foundation. All those companies had a pre-mine. Shares were created before the company was made public. They were private companies before they went public. Every single company has insiders. All those companies had initial investors. The Bitcoin network treats every single Bitcoin the same as every other Bitcoin. There are no initial investors. There's nobody who knew about Bitcoin before 2009. There's a person who wrote the code, but the code is just a protocol. That's it. The actual network was made public in 2009, and that's when it was started. Bitcoin has no office. All those companies have offices. They all have ongoing expenses. They all have to pay for salaries. They all have websites. They all have marketing teams. They have an executive team. They all have people that are working in the back end to create value for the company. Bitcoin has none of that. That's the difference here. Bitcoin is money. Bitcoin is not a company. If you compare Bitcoin to a company, you've already lost the plot. Bitcoin is completely separate from all of those. All of those have none of the fundamental benefits that Bitcoin offers. All of those companies did have a starting price. They had an IPO price. All of those companies have a human controlling them. All of them have a CEO. All of them have an executive team. All of them are not competing to be the fairest money in the world. So just making this comparison here shows how little information you're going to get from this video, how many of your brain cells are probably going to die by the time you're done watching this video. Let's keep going.
People can't stand being the ones missing out on the skyrocketing price. Now, I realize we're doing this video during a time when Bitcoin cannot stop going up. So, of course, you can look at this going, Paul, you're wrong. I could be wrong. But let's understand what an investment is. Because a lot of people say I'm investing in Bitcoin, and I always write immediately speculating in Bitcoin. And guys, there are other things that people speculate into that I've done. Artwork, baseball cards, these things are all speculative.
Comparing Bitcoin as a speculative investment to artwork and baseball cards is, again, just stupid, because you can't send your baseball cards to somebody across the world and nobody can verify your baseball cards immediately. You can't send them across the world using the Bitcoin network. Baseball cards are not digital. To send your baseball cards to somebody across the world, what do you have to do? You have to pay for shipping. You have to probably pay for certified shipping, whatever it's called, the highest tier of shipping. It'll cost you a ton of money to move it across the world. For example, with Bitcoin, you can send $40,000 across the world, and the other person has full verification. They know for a fact that it's real. It costs $10. How much would it cost to verify the authenticity of a baseball card or the authenticity of a piece of artwork, an art project, whatever it is? How much would that cost to verify the authenticity? You'd have to bring in experts from all around the world to make sure that you're not getting scammed. On the Bitcoin network, all of that is done for you. Also, thinking that Bitcoin is speculative doesn't really make any sense anymore, because there are people all around the world who are saving in Bitcoin. They're putting their wealth in Bitcoin. Even the US government is saying that they want to start a strategic Bitcoin reserve with 1 million Bitcoin. The total there will ever be is 21 million Bitcoin. So the US government is planning to buy 5% of the total supply, take it out of the circulating supply, and never sell it again. How is this speculative anymore? Speculation is based on thoughts or guesses. So I looked at the definition here. Thoughts or guesses, ideas or guesses about something that's not known. For example, there is speculation that he will run for president again, risk-taking in business. The act of taking a big risk in business in the hopes of making a big profit. You are speculating when you buy stocks. You're speculating when you buy any stock. You're speculating when you buy real estate. You expect the value to go up. You expect the number of people who want your property to increase over time. In finance, speculation can refer to short sales, where the speculator hopes for a decline in value. Thinking that Bitcoin is still speculative shows that you have done no research on the topic. You have spoken to nobody who has actually used Bitcoin as money. I regularly speak to people who use Bitcoin because they don't have a fiat currency that they can rely on that will store its value. They can either use US dollars or they can use their local currency, and their local currency is losing value so quickly that the US dollar seems strong in comparison. But then these people have educated themselves and they've noticed that US dollars lose 7 to 10% of their value every single year. They don't have the option to buy stocks. They don't have the option to buy gold. They don't have the option to buy bonds. They can't buy prime real estate in the US. Prices are way too high. So what do? They accumulate Bitcoin because they know for a fact that there's only going to be 21 million. So how is Bitcoin speculation when you know that there's only ever going to be 21 million? How is real estate not speculation when you think about how a building can open right next to your house and it could house another 1,000 people, reducing the demand for your building or for your property? How is real estate not speculation? So if you're thinking that Bitcoin is speculation, you also have to consider the fact that everything else is also speculation. Real investments, on the other hand, produce value for the owner, even if the market were to be closed forever. Bitcoin's value is as something that can't be taken from you. It can't be confiscated. It can't be censored. That's the value of Bitcoin. Even if Bitcoin's market were to shut down, let's say there was no US dollar price that was widely available for it, that wouldn't make a difference. People can still trade their Bitcoin with other people, and they can get things of value because they can set their own prices if they want to. Another point he made there was intrinsic value. This is from Investopedia. So the intrinsic value of a business or security is its inherent value based on its future cash flow, risk, and growth potential. So what is the inherent value of this? What is this worth? This is a piece of paper. This has no value in and of itself. So why do we use this as money? We use this as money because we trust the government that issues it won't issue too much. But clearly, they've started issuing way more than they should be. Even Americans don't want to hold US dollars. So if somebody tells you that Bitcoin is speculative, if somebody tells you that Bitcoin has no intrinsic value, ask them, what intrinsic value does the US dollar have? We use US dollars to transfer value, to store value, to account for value. A lot of people around the world use US dollars, only US dollars, to store value. What intrinsic value do US dollars have, though? There's no intrinsic value there. US dollars are backed by trust, and trust can disappear overnight.
Why? They don't create anything, they don't generate anything. But when you buy a stock of a company that's generating cash, if the market went away for that company tomorrow, you would still have access and a claim to the free cash flow in the bank account and the assets of the business.
But if you're comparing stocks to Bitcoin, then you don't quite understand what Bitcoin is. Because, like I said, Bitcoin has no middleman. Bitcoin has no person at the top. You don't have to rely on anybody. With stocks, you have to worry about the company creating value constantly. You have to worry about the company's executive team not being incompetent. How do you know for a fact that that won't be the case 20, 30, 40 years from now? How do you know for a fact that the company that you're investing in will be valuable in the future? Isn't that speculation?
Until the stock market opened again, let's say 20 years down the road, that business would continue to get more valuable as it drove revenue and profit. But let's take away the value of Bitcoin. How are you going to interact? How do you know what your Bitcoin is worth before you buy something? Supporters claim that Bitcoin could one day replace fiat currency or rival gold as a store of value, but there's no clear roadmap or economic foundation supporting these claims as of now. And
the roadmap that supports these claims is that there are countries, there are companies, there are individuals who are using it to save. And over time, the number of people who want to use it to save will increase because they'll realize that there's only 21 million. There's never going to be more than that. If you use a form of money that has a finite supply, then you're going to increase your purchasing power over time. On the other hand, if you were to save in this, and like I said, the majority of the world saves in fiat currencies. The assumption in this video is being made that everyone has access to stocks and real estate. They don't. They save in pieces of paper like this. And there's no limit to how many pieces of paper can be printed. So when you compare Bitcoin to stocks, when you compare it to real estate, that just breaks down your entire argument.
People who try to say that, well, what about gold? Yeah, what about gold? Gold has thousands and thousands and thousands of years of evidence that it has other uses besides just a backing of currency. Now, we don't.
I think that's just another reason to not use it as money, to not use it to back currency, because we have other uses for it. So, for example, if we stopped using gold as a savings account and Bitcoin replaced it, wouldn't that mean that we'd probably have better electronics? We'd probably become a lot more efficient as a society if we used gold to conduct electricity. Gold is supposed to be one of the best ways to conduct electricity. It doesn't erode. You can make it as thin as you want to. It's malleable, extremely malleable. You can melt it down. You can break it into very, very tiny pieces. Wouldn't using gold as all of those uses, instead of hoarding it in our safes, in our vaults, instead of keeping it in our vaults, wouldn't it be better to just use it in the electronics that we need to use it for? The price shouldn't be as high as it is. The only reason why it is because people hoard it. People save as much of it as they possibly can. And it literally hurts other people. It hurts industries when people just hold as much gold as they possibly can. If anything, we should be using gold specifically for the use cases that this guy, I think his name is Paul, is mentioning. We shouldn't be using gold as a savings account. We should be using something else.
Don't use it to back our currency anymore, which has led to massive inflation. But how is Bitcoin the solution for that when Bitcoin itself is valued in the very dollars it wants to replace? Why was
I think just that sentence there, I'm going to go through it again.
Back our currency anymore, which has led to massive inflation. But how is Bitcoin the solution for that when Bitcoin itself is valued in the very dollars it wants to replace? Why?
So when you really break down that sentence, it shows you that this guy has literally done zero research on this topic. He's done no research. He's probably never gone past the headlines. Maybe he's read a couple of articles here and there, but he hasn't read anything relevant or important. He's read the mainstream stuff. He hasn't read content from people who've actually done a deep dive. But this is just a quick Google search. Why is it that we price things in dollars? So I Googled it. I quickly Googled it just to get the point across. Why do we price things in dollars? Why is everything in US dollars? Since the US held the most of the world's gold supply and the gold-backed dollar was relatively stable, it was agreed that the US dollar would be the official reserve currency. So the entire world agreed that we would use US dollars as money, and that's why everything is valued in dollars. The reason why we use US dollars to value everything is because it's the biggest market in the world. Everybody in the world wants to use US dollars. Everybody in the world wants US dollars because they believe that US dollars have value. That's the key word. Believe. It's trust. It's based on trust. So because the entire world trusts the US dollar right now, keep in mind that could completely change. Trust could be gone tomorrow, next year, 10 years from now. If the US government prints way too much money to support its own economy, the rest of the world is going to figure it out. They're going to see that there's way too many dollars. We're losing our purchasing power. Why would we continue to hold this thing? So the reason why everything is priced in US dollars, the reason why Bitcoin is priced in US dollars is because there's a market for exchanging US dollars for Bitcoin. Bitcoin is also priced in Canadian dollars. You can also price Bitcoin in houses. For example, 4.3 Bitcoin buy one house, 0.02 Bitcoin buy 1 ounce of gold, and so on. Different things can be priced in Bitcoin, just like Bitcoin can be priced in different things. So we can have different currencies that price Bitcoin: euros, pounds, dollars, yen, won, whatever the currency is that you want to price it in. If there's a market for it, it'll be priced in that. If you want to price your Bitcoin in headphones, you can go ahead and do that as well. The fact that Bitcoin is priced in US dollars has nothing to do with Bitcoin's value. All that shows you is that the world has US dollars and they want to exchange it for Bitcoin. And if we look at the Bitcoin to US dollar price, all you see is that the amount of Bitcoin that people are willing to give away for 1 US dollar keeps decreasing. So 1 Bitcoin costs more and more dollars, meaning that this pricing mechanism is kind of breaking apart. It's falling apart in the sense that people may not want dollars for Bitcoin in the future because the price may be too high. At some point, we'll see $1 million. Then we'll see $100 million. Then we'll see $1 billion for 1 Bitcoin. That doesn't mean that if the US dollar disappears, then Bitcoin is going to disappear. We also see in countries like, let's say, Argentina, the US dollar is priced in pesos. Does that mean if the peso disappears, the US dollar will disappear? No. Thinking that way just shows how little you understand what Bitcoin is. I feel very bad for the people who are watching this video, for the people who watched this video and actually took the advice to heart and chose not to buy Bitcoin because of what Paul said.
It's valued in the very dollars it wants to replace. Why was Bitcoin created? It was created originally to keep transactions away from the government. Guys, do you think the government's ever going to allow that? If the US government ever thought that people were getting away with defrauding them by using Bitcoin, all the government has to do is say, Bitcoin's gone. It's done.
It doesn't work that way. The Bitcoin protocol is controlled by something like 100,000 computers around the world. If the US government wants to change the Bitcoin protocol, they have to get all of those computers to agree to their change. Why would the people running those computers agree to any changes that the US government wants to make? So, for example, if the US government doesn't think that the US dollar can compete with Bitcoin and they want all of those nodes to shut down their computers, do you think that those people will agree? I don't think so. The main reason for why Bitcoin exists is to get away from the US dollar. If the US government is feeling the heat of Bitcoin, if the US government is feeling the competition, then that just means that the people who are running nodes are doing something right. It just means that the US government has to change its ways. Otherwise, the US dollar will be phased out, just like every other fiat currency in the past.
Another thing that's interesting, whenever I hear people talk about the merits of Bitcoin, I say, great, tell me how you value Bitcoin. And they list all these things about Bitcoin. And I say, okay, you said a lot of qualitative things, which is wonderful. Now let's change the price of Bitcoin by adding 2 zeros. Are all your statements still true? Yes, they are. Okay, let's take 3 zeros away. Are all your statements still true? yes, it's not an investment. Because if I look at
And that's the point. Bitcoin is not an investment, it's a savings tool. Bitcoin is not something that you want to use to generate yield. Bitcoin is supposed to stay the same no matter what. You're supposed to have all of these characteristics met, all of these needs of people who want money. All of these needs should be met. There should always be a limited supply, no matter what the price goes to. If the price goes to $10 billion, there will still be 21 million Bitcoin. If the price goes to $10, there will still be 21 million Bitcoin. If the price goes to $10 billion, it'll still be decentralized. Regardless of the price, $10, still decentralized. Clear monetary policy will remain regardless of what the price is. Open and permissionless, regardless of what the price is. Why would you want these things to change if the price goes up? If the price of an investment goes up and it's giving you the same output as it was before, then of course it's a terrible investment. Why would you want to continue buying it? With Bitcoin, it's going to continue giving these same things no matter what the price is because of that inelastic supply. Because there's never going to be more than 21 million Bitcoin. Because the demand can continue to go up. Because more and more people can always demand Bitcoin. But the supply will never change. There will never be a change in how much Bitcoin exists. That's exactly what we need from a form of money. Why would you want all of these things to change if the price goes up? Honestly, that's a stupid way to think of it. That's an extremely stupid way to think of it. Why would you want Bitcoin to have the characteristics of fiat currencies and central bank digital currencies if the price goes up? Why would you want the characteristics to change? Why would you want all of this to change if the price goes up? I think, again, Paul has no idea what he's talking about, and he chose to make this 18-minute video just spreading garbage about something that he doesn't understand at all.
a company like Microsoft, and I name all the reasons why it could be a good or bad investment. If I add 2 zeros to it, it becomes a bad investment immediately. Those statements aren't all true. If I take 2 zeros away, those statements are even better. But with Bitcoin,
that's the point. If Bitcoin's price goes up, the people who hold it may not even want to sell because they know for a fact that the characteristics that they bought it for still remain the same. This is why you can never be late to Bitcoin. No matter how high the price goes, I'm still going to be a buyer. I don't care if the price goes to $1 million, $10 million, $100 million. If I have extra fiat currencies, I'm going to give those fiat currencies away and I'm going to get Bitcoin in exchange. I don't care what the price is. And that's the point. That's the point of a savings tool. That's the point of gold. No matter what happens to gold, let's say 5,000 years ago, 1 ounce of gold was exactly the same as 1 ounce of gold today. As long as they have the same purity, exactly the same. Same atom. That's the point. 1 Satoshi from 2010, a Satoshi is the smallest fraction of a Bitcoin. 1 Satoshi from 2010 has the exact same value to the network as it does today. The network does not care what the dollar value of a Satoshi is. It doesn't care what the dollar value of a Bitcoin is. You can use Satoshis, you can use Bitcoin to pay the transaction fees to make sure that you can move your Bitcoin from one place, one address, to another. It doesn't matter how much Bitcoin's price is on the market. It doesn't matter what the US dollar value is. It doesn't matter how many people adopt it. So if we go to mempool here, we can see you'll always be able to use Satoshis to pay for your transactions. This dollar value will continue to change. The amount of dollars that you pay per transaction will continue to change, but you'll always be able to pay Satoshis to get your Bitcoin transferred from one address to another. And that's the point. The point of Bitcoin is to remain the same no matter what. It doesn't matter how many people want it. It doesn't matter if, for example, Paul starts buying it. It doesn't matter if Paul starts advertising it to his clients and starts talking about it because he finally realizes it's the best form of money. It doesn't matter. There will always be 21 million Bitcoin. All of these characteristics will still remain the same. And that's what makes Bitcoin the best form of money in the world.
As much as I hear people say the fundamentals there's limited supply. Guys, I can take a dump in a bag. It's the only bag of my feces in the entire world. Does it make it valuable? Not necessarily, because you have to have a use for that. And you might say,
I don't even know where to start with that, with that comparison. I mean, this is supposed to be a serious video about somebody who's talking about investments, and he's talking about a bag of his own feces. So it tells you how little research he's done. Let's go to the Bitcoin network. Can you send a bag of feces across the world using a digital network and paying $27.76 to transfer $55,000 worth of your feces. Can you pay $27.76 to do that? Probably not. Also, people don't want feces, they want Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is actually scarce. Bitcoin actually has value. Bitcoin is a form of money that the entire world will accept. You can go to any part of the world, and I'll guarantee you that you can find someone who's either received Bitcoin, who's heard of Bitcoin, who's sent Bitcoin, who's bought Bitcoin, who's done something with Bitcoin. But Paul's feces, probably not. You can't send Paul's feces using a digital network because it's not digital. On the other hand, for example, if I bought something from Japan or from India or from China, I can send them Bitcoin without any third parties interfering or knowing that that transaction was done. I can do it completely pseudonymously. If I have an address, I can send Bitcoin to another address, and nobody can stop me from doing so. Nobody can track that transaction because Bitcoin is digital. It's a digital form of money with all the characteristics of gold. On the other hand, feces does not have that. I know that was supposed to be a joke, but I'm pretty sure there are a lot of other people who think the same way, and it just shows you how little research people have done to understand what this network is and the value that it provides.
Sit there and say, Paul, you're missing it. There's so much use for Bitcoin. Guys, I own 8 businesses upstairs. I own 1,000 apartments. I own luxury rentals around the world. Not one time ever in all of these things I've done has anybody said to me, Paul, do you accept Bitcoin? Not once.
This is because Bitcoin is in the store of value phase. So there's a store of value phase, there's a medium of exchange phase, and there's a unit of account phase for a form of money. A store of value phase is where people just use it to save for the future. That's where the Bitcoin network is right now. Most people just hold on to Bitcoin because they think it'll increase in price over time. It'll be able to buy more US dollars in exchange. So why would they want to get rid of their Bitcoin? Just because Paul hasn't been offered to be paid in Bitcoin doesn't mean that Bitcoin is speculative or it's worthless. It just means that the people that Paul is interacting with probably don't want to pay in Bitcoin yet. Either they're using it as a store of value or they have no idea what it is. Keep in mind that probably less than 1% of the world actually understands what this thing is. So I'm not saying that Paul is wrong for not understanding it. He's wrong for not doing the research before making a video like this and misinforming his followers.
Now, the internet. There was a lot of fraud and speculation on the internet. Didn't mean the internet was a fraud. And that's why I always say crypto in its current essence will not succeed. It could change. If the US government came out and said, we're making Bitcoin our official currency, but my guess is then that the price of the currency will still drop in the long run. Why?
That doesn't even make any sense. If the US government wants to use Bitcoin as its official currency, that means that the demand will go up. It means that more people will want to hold Bitcoin. Why would the price decrease? If there's 21 million Bitcoin and more people want to hold it, why would the price decrease?
Because it has to equate out and there's too much euphoria around it. There's too much fraud right now. Look at the people around you who love crypto. If you've been around investing for a long time, these are the people who always get burned. Let's look at some of the problems.
I think we have to go back to the comparison of crypto and Bitcoin. Crypto is not Bitcoin, so this comparison right here is completely wrong. FTX had nothing to do with Bitcoin. All these random cryptocurrencies have nothing to do with Bitcoin. Bitcoin is completely separate. Bitcoin is the only one that has these characteristics. No other cryptocurrency has this. If you're comparing Bitcoin to FTX, you don't understand what Bitcoin is. You don't understand what it stands for. You don't understand the value that Bitcoin provides. FTX is an exchange. The business of an exchange is to help people convert their US dollars or whatever other currency into cryptocurrencies. FTX chose to promote other cryptocurrencies. They gambled with people's money. That has nothing to do with Bitcoin. That's like saying if a bank collapses, then the US dollar is a fraud. I mean, the US dollar is actually a fraud, but it has nothing to do with that bank. The US dollar was a fraud before that bank collapses. If we look through at all these articles, we can see TD Bank failed to stop money laundering. JP Morgan was fined $350 million for inadequate trading reporting. We can see HSBC also violated money laundering rules. We can see here JP Morgan Chase, Bank of America, and Wells Fargo accounts used an alleged $92 million money laundering scheme. So does this mean that the US dollar is a fraud as well? Probably not. I don't think that the people who read these articles think that the US dollar is a fraud just because these banks were caught in some kind of fraudulent transaction. Thinking that would just show that you don't completely understand how the money system works. You don't understand how money in general works. It's like thinking if somebody gives you fake gold, then the entire gold market is a fraud. It's just a stupid way to think.
Let's look at some of the problems with this early adaptation of Bitcoin. In 2022, FTX raised over $1.8 billion from investors, promising safety and transparency. Behind the scenes, founder Sam Bankman-Fried funneled customer funds to his trading firm Alameda Research. The result, a bankruptcy that temporarily wiped out billions in customer
Again, this
funds.
has absolutely nothing to do with Bitcoin.
Now, they were all made whole at some point, but it took a long time, and it took a rebound of Bitcoin's prices for that to happen. In 2023,
Bitcoin's price rebounding had nothing to do with FTX holders being made whole. It had nothing to do with it. FTX didn't even hold any Bitcoin. So it shows you how little research this guy's done.
And its CEO, CZ, who claimed to be the adult in the room, pled guilty to federal charges of money laundering and failing to register as a money transmitter. Guys, if it's supposed to be under the radar and away from government control, why are these things happen? The department.
It's because these companies have to register with their country, the country that they're doing business in. They have to register with that country in order to do business in that country. If you don't register and you make the wrong mistakes and you do things that are against your country's regulations, then of course you're going to get fined. Exactly what happened here. HSBC violated money laundering rules. This is a Swiss regulator. JP Morgan Chase, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, accounts used in, like I said, alleged $92 million money laundering scheme. Does that make the US dollar financial system a scam? No.
Department of Justice's $4 billion penalty marked one of the largest in US history. And remember, guys, this led to everyone requesting that the government regulate crypto, which absolutely melted my brain. Crypto was created to avoid all the government scrutiny, all these things to avoid government interaction. And then the crypto people said, please come save us. Guys, this is proof that the world of crypto is running around with their heads cut off. They have no idea what they want. It's purely a speculative asset. It generates nothing, just like artwork.
Just like the $100 bill, which the entire world uses as money. This is a piece of paper, backed by nothing, backed by trust. Trust can fade away within seconds.
At least with artwork, I cannot go create another Van Gogh. And you might sit there and say, well, there's only 21 million Bitcoins allowed. Okay. But guys, it's coding. At some point, if they need to make more crypto, they'll figure out a way, more Bitcoin. If they don't, they're going to create more and more cryptocurrencies, which is what.
Just saying that they can create more cryptocurrencies, it shows that, again, that you don't understand it. If I need gold to make a phone, can I replace it with, let's say, copper? No. If somebody wants to be paid in Bitcoin and you say, hey, I don't have Bitcoin, but I have this thing, and I can pay you the same amount of this thing. Like, instead of paying you one Bitcoin, I can pay you one of this Shiba Inu. Do you think that the merchant is going to accept that? This comparison just shows you how completely brain dead a lot of people who are criticizing Bitcoin are. They have no idea what they're talking about, and yet they insist on just making videos about a topic that they're completely uninformed on.
What's happened over time. At one point, there were over 20,000 cryptocurrencies out there. In 2023, the FBI reported that Americans lost $5.6 billion to crypto scams alone, with investment fraud accounting for $3.96 billion of those losses. The real cost of Bitcoin isn't just in losses, it's in the lives it disrupts. The FBI highlights scams like pig butchering, where victims are groomed to invest their life savings into fake crypto platforms. In 2023,
crypto platforms are completely separate from Bitcoin, though. This video is supposed to be about Bitcoin, not crypto. If you're going to make a video calling Bitcoin a scam, at least do the research to figure out how Bitcoin is different from crypto.
The retirees lost over $1.6 billion to crypto fraud, making the most targeted demographic. Crypto's decentralized nature makes it an easy playground for criminals, from hackers to scammers. Now, Bitcoin's decentralized.
If you're thinking about how Bitcoin is going to get scammed because of it being decentralized, think about how much you're getting scammed by this thing being centralized. The fact that your US dollars are centralized make it so that the US government can print as much as it wants to. The Federal Reserve can print as much as it wants to. The US government can borrow as much as it wants to. And the value that's been lost because of this thing is a lot more than the value that's been lost because of fraud due to crypto and due to Bitcoin. So just I mean, when you think of it from that perspective, when you think that the entire world is losing 3% of its value because the US government wants to extract value from everyone else, how much of a loss is that? Inflation is a loss that we've pretty much accepted, that we're thinking that it's going to happen no matter what. That's a loss on its own.
Nature is often celebrated as a technological breakthrough, but it's also made crypto a prime tool for criminal activity. And by the way, that is going away. There is no way the US government, who owns crypto, is going to allow crypto to have transactions without them knowing about it. You might not remember.
They have no control over the network. So like I said, if you go to the mempool.space website, you can see, if you go to block, if you go to the most recent block here, you can see this transaction came from this address to this address. This transaction came from these two addresses to this address. This transaction came from this address to this address. If you look at this address, you have no idea where this address is. You have no idea where it came from. You have no idea who's involved in this. You have no idea what the names are that are tied to this address. You have no idea who sent this money. So if the US government doesn't know who's sending the money, how are they going to stop them from sending money? How are they going to stop them from doing what they want with Bitcoin without their interference? They can't.
But there was a time when crypto was being promoted as tax-free. You can sell your gains, and guess what the IRS did? No. If that's an asset, we want our change. We want.
The only reason why they are able to know where Bitcoin is coming from and where it's going is if these addresses are tied to an exchange and the exchange gives them your information. So for example, if you buy Bitcoin from an exchange and you have it sent to this address here, your exchange will be able to tell the IRS that you own this address. And if the Bitcoin moves from here to another address, then you should be taxed. But the thing is that you can also mix your coins. For example, you can move your coins from one address and you can put them in another address. You can basically break the chain of custody, and that means that the IRS, the CRA, the exchange has no idea where this Bitcoin went, and they can't really tax you anymore because they don't know where your Bitcoin is. You can also buy Bitcoin off an exchange. You can buy a Bitcoin in a non-KYC way, meaning that nobody knows you even own the Bitcoin that you have.
On our cut. Between 2017 and 2021, Binance, the world's largest cryptocurrency exchange, processed over $2 billion in transactions.
$653 million US. They bribed TD employees. Does this mean that the US financial system is a scam? Does this mean that the entire financial system should be taken apart? I think so. Maybe we should do that. If that's what you think about Bitcoin, if you think Bitcoin is a scam because people are using it to pay for drugs, to pay for illegal activities, and you think that Bitcoin is a scam because of that, well, I think that the US dollar financial system is a scam because TD Bank, a bank that's actually regulated by the government, is processing transactions that are laundering money. $653 million being laundered by TD Bank. So should TD Bank be shut down as well? I don't see any videos about that from Paul.
Hacking group, which laundered millions in stolen funds through the exchange. This kind of criminal exploitation is not an isolated issue. Bitcoin ATMs have emerged as a new tool for scammers. Fraudsters impersonate government officials or claim fake emergencies, pressuring victims to deposit money into Bitcoin ATMs, which are then transferred directly to scammers' wallets. Now, guys, you're going to sit there going, Paul, everybody has scams. Cash has scams. You're right. But there's this new cryptocurrency, this new way of giving money. Do you think the government's going to allow that to happen in even more common fashion? Look at cash, for example. If you go to a bank and you open an account, and in any given year you deposit or withdraw in excess of $10,000, it's a sign for it.
That's completely incorrect, by the way. It's per transaction. It's not any given year. So it doesn't matter if you deposit $10,000 throughout the year. I think that may just have been a mistake on his part. Maybe he meant per transaction, but that's not correct. That's not accurate. If you deposit $10,000 once as cash, they have to report it as a suspicious transaction, something that has to be checked out. They have to question you. They have to fill out a report and all that. But that's $10,000 per transaction, not $10,000 for the year.
You have to make a report to the IRS about this. That's how the government watches you. So you think they're just going to let you do whatever you want with crypto without any regulation whatsoever? You're out of your mind. The government does not want competition. It
doesn't matter about them wanting competition. It's that they have to deal with competition. They have nothing. They can't do anything to stop Bitcoin at this point. If they wanted to stop Bitcoin, they would have done so already. If they haven't stopped Bitcoin yet, they're never going to be able to stop it because they just can't. They have no power over this thing. Like I said, 100,000 computers around the world run this protocol. They have to shut down every single one of those computers in order to stop the Bitcoin network from working the way it does.
Crypto company has been implicated in some sort of fraud or some sort of SEC investigation, nearly all of them. In addition, when you see assets being promoted by celebrities, is that really an investment? How often you see companies out there making commercials for Berkshire Hathaway? How often you
I actually haven't seen any celebrities talking about Bitcoin directly. I've seen them talking about exchanges, but exchanges just help facilitate transactions between people who want fiat currencies versus people who want Bitcoin. So if, let's say, for example, you have a gold dealer who you buy gold from, and this gold dealer gives you a tungsten bar that's covered in gold, does that mean that the entire gold market is a scam? No. Making that comparison just shows that you have very little knowledge on this topic.
see Microsoft and those guys making commercials for buy our stock, but celebrities like Matt Damon, Tom Brady, Kim Kardashian have all pushed Bitcoin and
Bitcoin has no marketing team.
arenas and ran ads featuring A-list stars. But these
FTX has
endorsements
nothing to
weren't
do with
about
Bitcoin.
financial advice. They're about lining their pockets and doing more hype to promote the price. The history of Bitcoin is
I'm perfectly fine with that part of what he said because these institutions have nothing to do with Bitcoin. So it doesn't matter what they do, they're separate from Bitcoin. You shouldn't make your decision to buy Bitcoin based on what those institutions are doing. Thinking that you should make your decision to buy Bitcoin based on what those institutions are doing is just stupid and shows that you haven't done any research.
obviously been riddled with rises and crashes. Guys, is that what you want to see from a currency that is the fundamental backbone of the economy that everybody thinks it is?
The difference between Bitcoin and US dollars in this case is that the US dollar just crashes. At least Bitcoin rises. The US dollar just crashes over time. It just falls and falls and falls. That's a reason why stock prices are going up. That's a reason why real estate prices are going up. This picture is a clear indicator of what happens to the US dollar. Like I said, the US dollar seems stable. That's because one US dollar is equal to one US dollar. You know that if you have a dollar, you have $1, the nominal value will stay the same. But over time, the real value of that dollar will keep decreasing. For example, you can see here with $1, you could buy 30 Hershey's chocolate bars in 1913. Today, how many Hershey's chocolate bars can you buy? Probably one, maybe 0.75 bars. In 1944, you could buy 20 bottles of Coca-Cola with $1. In 1964, you could buy a drive-in movie ticket. In 1971, you could buy 17 oranges. So the US dollar's value isn't fluctuating. It just crashes. It just keeps decreasing over time. And that's what a lot of people want to promote. A lot of people are supporting the US dollar, which is guaranteed to lose value, over Bitcoin, which is pretty much guaranteed to increase in value over time because the number of US dollars in the system will continue to rise.
Come on, give me a break. In 2017, it hit a price of $14,400. In 2018, it hit almost $18,000 before crashing to the low 3,000s in 2019 and then rallying all the way to 60,000 in March of 2021, falling again down to the low 30s, recovering to 60,000 in October of 2021. Guys, the ride's been insane. But when you
I can see why people see this as a problem because the price rises and they build their hopes up to think that, oh, I'm going to be able to buy this, I'm going to be able to buy this, but then the price drops. And then the price rises again, the price drops. And unless you understand how Bitcoin works, you're not going to be able to stomach the volatility. And clearly, Paul does not understand how Bitcoin works. So if he did buy Bitcoin, he'd probably sell. He'd probably buy the peak and then he'd sell the bottom. The most important thing that you should focus on here is the higher highs and higher lows. The highs don't even really matter. It doesn't matter how high Bitcoin's price goes. The one thing that you should focus on is the higher lows. So over time, at this point, Bitcoin was maybe $10. At this point, Bitcoin was maybe $3,000. At this point, Bitcoin was $15,000. At this point, Bitcoin is $50,000. So over time, the higher highs and higher lows are what you should focus on. Maybe even ignore the higher highs, focus on the higher lows. Over time, Bitcoin's price goes up and to the right. Even when Bitcoin's crashing, the lower prices are always increasing. Like I said, from $10 to $1,000 to $3,000 to $15,000 to $50,000. And this number will keep rising. You should always base your expectations on the lowest price. So if Bitcoin were to go back down to $50,000, $60,000, I personally would be okay with it. It would just mean that I can buy more. I know for a fact that Bitcoin will never go back down to $1. It'll never go back down to $10. It probably will never go back down to 1,000. It'll probably never go back to even 15,000 that it hit in 2022.
Recovering to 60,000 in October 2021. Guys, the ride's been insane. But when you compare this to other assets Bitcoin is compared to, the price fluctuations simply don't occur. But just like every other thing in the world, when Bitcoin does,
I mean, if you think that the price fluctuations don't occur, then you must be out of your mind, because the US dollar's purchasing power just keeps decreasing and the price just crashes all the time. It doesn't fluctuate, it just crashes. It falls straight down. Over time, you're going to be guaranteed to be able to buy fewer things with your savings. And there's nothing that you can do about it unless you exchange it for other things like stocks, real estate, even Bitcoin. Bitcoin will give you the best returns over time. Stocks and real estate will outperform the US dollar, but they'll never outperform Bitcoin because of how Bitcoin works. Bitcoin is an asset with an inelastic supply. Anyone can buy it. Anyone can take full self-custody. They don't have to rely on a government. They don't have to rely on a central third party to manage that money for them. They can do everything themselves. That's what makes Bitcoin's return so much higher. Most people have no idea what this is. Most people haven't adopted it. When they do figure it out, they're going to be fighting for this asset with an inelastic supply that will never change. It'll never increase. And they'll just be left fighting for the scraps. I guarantee you that Paul will be buying Bitcoin past $1 million. He won't be buying it under $1 million. He's going to be buying when it goes above $1 million, because that's just how people think. People can't wrap their heads around being early to an investment, dealing with the volatility. And that's one of the complaints that he's making in this video.
the great stories follow. When Bitcoin does poorly, the bad stories follow. But what I have noticed is the correlation between Bitcoin and QQQ, a highly technologically driven value driver in the US economy. The bull.
I guess it's reasonable to think that QQQ and Bitcoin are correlated. I think every asset pretty much has been correlated because it's all based on supply and demand of the US dollar. If we take a look at the returns, though, we can see what the difference is. So in the last 5 years, QQQ has returned 151%, while Bitcoin has returned 1,270% in the last 5 years. I'll show you the chart. 5 years, 1,270%. So is there really a comparison to be made there? I don't really think it makes any sense to compare the two. It's just correlated for a little while. Bitcoin is still a very tiny asset, still worth $2 trillion. Eventually, when it's worth $100 trillion, $150 trillion, that's when we can make comparisons and really make sense of that.
I believe is best examined by following its most popular and accepted experts. And I put experts in quotes there, guys. Michael Saylor has made the base case for Bitcoin, stating that it'll account for 7% of global wealth, with each coin being worth $13 million by 2045. Guys, if you bought a piece of real estate that you wanted to be worth X amount of dollars, you know it has to generate every year in profit to do that. Stock, same thing. But to get to those levels would require 29% returns per year for the next 20 years. His bull case.
I mean, Bitcoin's returned something like 70 to 80% over the last 15 years. So I think over the next 20 years to return 29% is pretty conservative. I think it'll actually be higher than 29%. I personally estimated 35 or 30%. So 35% over the first 10 years, then 30% over the following 10 years, because of the adoption, because Bitcoin has a finite supply, and because there's an unlimited amount of demand for Bitcoin. So what I mean here is that more and more people will want to buy Bitcoin over time, meaning that the price will go up because the people who own it won't want to sell.
Calls for almost $50 million per coin and accounting for 22% of global wealth by 2045. But guys, remember, this has nothing to do with fundamentals. You might think it is. It is not. Stop.
It has everything to do with fundamentals. This is what Paul doesn't quite understand. He hasn't looked at these graphics. He doesn't know what the fundamentals of Bitcoin are. He's telling you that it has nothing to do with fundamentals of Bitcoin, but he doesn't even know what the fundamentals of Bitcoin are.
Stop convincing yourself otherwise. The best part is when I hear crypto people say they just don't understand. I don't hear Warren Buffett saying that. I don't see Howard Marks saying that. I don't hear any of the smartest investors who have the track record of doing so great over long periods of time. You know what they do? They teach. All right.
I've spent a year and a half posting about Bitcoin. I've seen countless other pages that are regularly talking about what Bitcoin is. I don't see a YouTube video from Warren Buffett teaching people how the stock market works. I don't see him making his own content about how the stock market works. On the other hand, we have a billionaire like Michael Saylor who's making regular content telling people this is where this is going. If you don't understand it, that's perfectly fine. Don't buy it if you don't want to, but this is where it's going. He's still putting in the time to teach people, to help people understand what it is. If he wanted to, he could just buy all the Bitcoin without telling anybody. He could be buying $1 billion, $10 billion, $15 billion worth of Bitcoin regularly and not tell anyone.
I see on Twitter, oh, they just don't understand. What do we understand? That every investment's the present value of all future cash flows?
Bitcoin doesn't need cash flows, and neither does any other form of money, and that's what people can't wrap their heads around. Bitcoin is money. Bitcoin is not an investment. It's a savings tool.
And Bitcoin has no cash flow. The dynamics that make up Bitcoin reaching these prices that Michael Saylor has talked about include a fixed supply of only 21 million coins, global accessibility, and resistance to censorship and manipulation, which will then lead Bitcoin to become as valuable as gold, which would make it worth $13 trillion. Now, guys, this journey also includes a new group of buyers like asset managers, countries, major investors buying into Bitcoin. And I think part of the reason my personal
They're already
opinion
doing
is
it.
they just don't want to miss out because so many people are demanding it. Give the people what they want. Included in this mix are wealthy individuals with billionaires claiming it's common for billionaires to have 1% allocation of Bitcoin. Maybe so. Gold holds 3.9% of global wealth, and Bitcoin is just 0.35%. And if it grows to just 3%, still below gold, the market cap would be 20 trillion and push the price to 1 million per coin. But guys, again, there's no fundamental reason behind that. Just like there's no fundamental reason behind gold.
Again, the fundamental reason is that it's the best store of value in the world. Nobody can stop you from transacting in it. Nobody can stop you from saving in it. You can hold the money without any third parties. You don't have to trust companies like banks. You don't have to trust governments. I used to work at a brokerage account. I'd see accounts with $1 million, $5 million blocked. They were frozen. Nobody could access them. The people who owned them couldn't even touch their own money. That's the reason why Bitcoin exists, to stop people from being able to mess around with other people's money, to stop governments, to stop the IRS from being able to stop somebody else from being able to spend their own money. That's the point here.
Yet we have thousands of years of data to show that gold has an ulterior use besides just being used as backing for currencies. Well,
again, gold has all these uses, but it would probably be better if it wasn't used as money because people wouldn't store it in their safes at home. They could actually use it as jewelry. They could actually carry it around. You wouldn't feel at risk for wearing a chain, a gold chain, if the price dropped, but you'd still have the same level of beauty in your jewelry. You'd still have that jewelry. You'd still have the same material, but the price would drop significantly if Bitcoin were to take over as money. Gold is being used as money, so it can't be used in these other use cases because people just hoard it. They keep as much as they can in their own safes, in their own vaults.
amazing about all this is it's all these speculators who are just relying on other people to see the value. And I see that on Twitter all the time. Look at it this way. Only this many people own crypto, own Bitcoin. Imagine when the masses see it. That is not a fundamental investment case. That is purely the greater fool theory. So
If that's a greater fool theory, then every single asset is based on a greater fool theory. Housing, for example, is based on a greater fool theory because you're buying houses, you're expecting the price of your house to go up over time. You're expecting to also get cash flows. What if the price of the house doesn't go up? What if you don't get cash flows? What if your house burns down? What if there's a hurricane and your house gets destroyed and you don't get paid out with insurance? We can speculate about real estate the same way that we can speculate about Bitcoin.
somebody else will pay more for it than I did. Claiming it's basically digital gold, and because of that, it'll command the same percentage of global wealth. That to me is not an investment thesis.
Bitcoin is digital gold because of these characteristics: fungibility, portability, durability, divisibility, scarce, decentralized, and saleable. It's digital gold because it has these characteristics. Fiat currencies only have some of these characteristics. It's not scarce. It is not decentralized. It's not really as portable as we want money to be. Bitcoin is much better with these characteristics than all of these other forms of money. The only reason why I said low for durability is because it doesn't have a very long track record, and over time that'll just work itself out.
It's a hopeful pipe dream. The prominent investors, Howard Marks, Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger, Monish Pabrai, Michael Burry, they talk about trading it. They sit there, even Burry talks about trading it, but they have skepticism towards Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies.
if you trade Bitcoin, I think you're making a really stupid decision, because if you miss some of the biggest days for Bitcoin's returns, you're going to miss the majority of your returns. You're not going to do very well. A lot of people are trading Bitcoin and they feel extremely stupid after Bitcoin just rises in a crazy amount and they lose a ton of money and they can't get that money back because they chose to trade their Bitcoin. So trading your Bitcoin is one of the dumbest decisions that you can make. You can do it if you want to. Maybe you'll get lucky, but it's very likely that you'll lose value over time. And another point here is that if you're listening to somebody like Warren Buffett, who's in his 90s, and you're making your decisions, your investment decisions, on some kind of technology based on what this 95-year-old guy has to say, then you're probably going to be completely misled. I doubt that Warren Buffett even knows what a smartphone is. I doubt that he's ever even used an iPhone before. So if you're taking his advice on technology, on something that's supposed to be money, then again, you've completely missed the point. Warren Buffett doesn't even understand the value of gold. He thinks that gold is essentially worthless. He doesn't like gold as money. He tries to compare gold to stocks because gold doesn't earn cash flows, but that's not the point of gold. The point of gold is to be a savings account, not an investment, and he doesn't understand that.
Buffett, often referred to as the Oracle of Omaha, has criticized Bitcoin for its lack of intrinsic value, stating cryptocurrencies basically have no value and they don't produce anything. He further emphasized his stance by remarking, I don't have any Bitcoin. I don't own any cryptocurrency. I never will. Now, a lot of people will tell me, well, he said the same thing about tech. No, he never said he never will. He said he doesn't understand it and therefore he doesn't buy it. But now that he's understanding more tech companies like Apple, he started to buy some. Charlie Munger, Buffett's longtime business partner, was even more forthright in his condemnation of
Another
Bitcoin.
95-year-old.
He has described it as worthless artificial gold and liking its trading to just dementia. Munger has also compared Bitcoin to rat poison and criticized the cryptocurrency market for its association with illicit activity.
Cryptocurrency has nothing to do with Bitcoin. I have to keep pointing this out so people can just understand this and see the point here.
Monish Pabrai, very person we've interviewed on this channel, an investor known for his adherence to Buffett's value investing principles, shares a very similar outlook. He's expressed doubts about Bitcoin's future, aligning with Buffett and Munger's views. On our channel,
all of these people have been wrong for 15
Bitcoin
years.
And crypto is going to zero. Collectively, these investors' critiques highlight concerns about Bitcoin's speculative nature and its perceived lack of fundamental value, cautioning against its inclusion in traditional investment portfolios. Guys, I hate to be a snob.
These are the kind of things that Vanguard also said. So Vanguard stopped their clients from buying Bitcoin. They didn't allow their clients to buy Bitcoin ETFs. They didn't list them for their clients to purchase them. And their clients lost 150% returns because of Vanguard, because Vanguard chose not to let their clients touch Bitcoin ETFs, to touch Bitcoin products, MicroStrategy, for example.
But I've never met somebody that I respected in the investment world who said they like Bitcoin. Everybody.
Honestly, some of these statements are just completely far-fetched. It just shows you how little this guy knows about what Bitcoin is, shows you how little research he's done. If you can't respect somebody like Seyfuddin Ammous, then I think, honestly, you're just an idiot. If you can't read his books and you can't come to your own decisions about where Bitcoin is going, if you can't do the research, clearly this guy hasn't been able to, then, I mean, what respect do you deserve?
Somebody I know who says they like Bitcoin is somebody I would never, ever talk to you about investing.
Again, that just shows you he avoids people who talk about Bitcoin. So how is he going to learn about Bitcoin if he avoids people who talk about it? It's impossible to learn about Bitcoin unless you get other people's opinions on it, unless you learn from other people, unless you spend time reading books. And those books come from people who talk about Bitcoin. If somebody's negative on Bitcoin, of course they're going to make negative books about Bitcoin. They're going to write negative articles about Bitcoin. If he can't talk to people who understand Bitcoin, of course he's not going to understand it. And this video is evidence of that.
I just laugh about it. By the way, do you know how many people tell me they're a crypto expert? Like every single person who talks about crypto says they're a crypto expert. That's really odd to me. If you still want to get into it, treat it as a gamble, not an investment. Day trade it. We believe in trading here. Trade it as an asset. That's fine by me. But diversify into traditional investments like ETFs or assets with intrinsic value, such as ETFs.
So he's telling you to guarantee your losses. Make sure that you can guarantee your losses. You can guarantee that you only earn 10% when inflation is 15%.
ETFs that are driven by S&P 500. Always conduct thorough research and never trust unsolicited investment advice.
He hasn't done the thorough research to make this video. And again,
especially from social media or unregulated platforms.
I'm actually getting a little
the Bitcoin
frustrated
story
here.
is absolutely captivating, but the evidence to me is clear. It's a speculative bubble fueled by manipulation, fraud, and hype. From FTX's collapse to Binance's record fines, the crypto ecosystem is riddled with scams designed to benefit a few at the expense of the many. Don't fall for the hype. Understand what you're buying. And just because you buy it with some sort of good story doesn't mean you're understanding what you're buying. It has to be coupled with some sort of fundamental analysis.
Honestly, watching that video made me a little angry because somebody like him who has 283,000 followers, somebody who's getting 60, 70,000 views per video, I would expect somebody like that to put in the time to do the research, to actually understand what they're criticizing. But clearly, he didn't do that. And I guarantee you that a lot of the videos that you see about Bitcoin going down, people thinking that Bitcoin's value is zero, people thinking that Bitcoin is worthless, all those videos are coming from people who haven't done the research, who don't quite understand what they're talking about, who don't quite understand what they're criticizing, especially people like Warren Buffett, people like Charlie Munger. They can't wrap their head around digital value. They would never be able to wrap their head around digital value. They'll never be able to give you a reason to buy Bitcoin because they don't understand what it is. They don't understand its purpose. I genuinely do think that Paul will eventually turn around on his thoughts on Bitcoin. He will figure it out at some point. He will buy Bitcoin. It'll probably be over $1 million when he does buy it. I think we will see a positive video about Bitcoin at some point in the future, maybe 5-10 years from now, when Bitcoin has massively outperformed every single one of his other assets. If you watch any more of these kinds of videos criticizing Bitcoin, please comment down below with them. I do want to go through every single one. I find it fun to talk about all these mistakes that people are making when it comes to Bitcoin.